Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is this is what the rest of the world thinks of Americans in 2019. Now, I'm from Germany. I've been to the States 3 times throughout my entire life. I've been 2 times to the West Coast and 1 time to the East Coast. I have a certain idea of what America is about. Even with my just 3 times visiting, I can certainly tell you that the way that Germans look at the U.S. right now, as of today. Now this was 2019, but it hasn't changed. They don't think of it very fondly. I'll be completely honest. I've heard some very very bad things being said for people around here. Pretty much exclusively just bad stuff. Nothing good. It seems like that no one here really likes the U.S., which is a shame. I think it's a absolute stunning and beautiful country. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what this video has to say. So let's go.
Can someone tell me why Americans always leave the AC on, even if they go out all day? This question we saw last night posted on an online forum by a disgruntled hotel owner. What followed were reams of insults, generalizations, arguments, peppered with the odd, intelligent, and temperate comment. That's par for the course online, but it's fortunate we saw that so soon before writing the show. We saw comments along the lines of Americans are just arrogant and ignorant, as if 325.7 million people were molded into one monolithic entity.
Yeah.
Then we saw, I'm American, and I leave the AC on as long as I like. I pay for it. See, people said, they all think the world owes them something. What about the environment? Driving
I can totally understand that. If you're paying for it, why shouldn't you take advantage of it?
around in their big cars and SUVs, throwing out more trash than anyone, and pretending to care about environmental disasters.
Well, that's not good.
This went on, with people casting aspersions against an entire nation. Others, of course, weren't so bad, calling out people for having a very limited understanding of a country and its cultural and intellectual diversity. But can we make such generalizations? Could we argue that many Americans embrace their individuality and their right to do what they want?
Yeah.
They paid for that darn AC, and they will darn well do what they want with it. The fact is, we all sometimes are culpable of whittling down the world to a manageable size that fits within our sometimes uneducated preconceptions. We cannot say all Americans are this or that, but perhaps there might be underlying character traits to a culture, something data, evidence, or experience.
I mean, just keep this in mind. Look at this map. Now, this might be very abstract, but it's true. I mean, look at it. The U.S. is so diverse. So diverse. It's literally the melting pot of the world. If you look at it, there's so many cultures, there's so many people, so many different races, there's so many different climates. I mean, you got everything. You got like 20 countries in one, basically, with the US. And you have, over 300 million people. So obviously the chance of them all being the same while having grown up in totally different places is very slim. Now here in Germany, for example, Germany is almost like half the size of Texas. So obviously there's a higher chance, and we've got 80 million people, which is, a lot, okay, for that small land. Now there's a much higher chance of Germans here being the exact same in the north than in the south and west and east, but in the States it's almost impossible. But everyone thinks that the people in the US, if they had to create one body that represents the US, it's someone from the south, which is just not true.
Can provide us with. But in the end, most of us don't rely on data or objective reasoning and rely instead on an image, a construction that we've created out of a wanton bias. Number 5. Arrogance. As we said, much of the world thinks Americans are arrogant. You don't have to look hard online to find this out. We hear that they like nothing more than to plant flags around their houses, and they go on and on about how great their country is, and by association that must mean how great they are, even though they often didn't do that much to claim this superiority. As the American comedian Doug Stanhope once alluded, some flag wavers are like imperial hangers-on. Anyway, some people say this is why Americans are often so loud, and don't worry, there are plenty of articles and forum questions asking why American voices tend to drown out others, say when abroad. We might ask if this has anything to do with that sense of patriotism. The great country, greatest, best in the world, no doubt, better than anyone else, and also the entitlement that comes from a place that espouses expressive individualism at all costs. The loud American is a much better known phrase than the great piece of literature called the quiet American. Forums are full of people talking about these loud people, demanding, expatiating, bragging, complaining, extolling the merits of good old America, and forcing some poor European into a quiet internal violence, wondering all the time, do they not realize they're being obnoxious? Where's the self-awareness? Hell yes, go America! Now this isn't of course true for all Americans, it's a stereotype, but it exists. If you don't believe us, check it out for yourself. You could be reading for a year, even though it's fantastically unrealistic.
I mean, what is it? What are you trying to tell me here? You know, you're trying to tell me that you don't want to be proud of your country. I mean, isn't that literally what everybody would want? Living in the country where you can actually be proud of it.
And arrogant to think the stereotype is true for all people in the USA. What we hope to do is point out such stereotypes, and we can discuss them after the show. Now, on to the next. Number 4. Ignorance. All countries attempt to imbue a sense of nationalism in their people. It's how they get soldiers to fight wars, to believe in the country, to create a sense of belonging and cooperation. But do nations attempt to foster ignorance in people? Well, you might have read some critics saying the American school system is purposely trying to dumb down its citizens. They want workers, robots, not creative, critical, skeptical kids that might ask too many questions. Hail the idiocracy! We're not saying this is true, it's a criticism leveled by some people, but we can say that much of the world thinks Americans are ignorant. Well, to be frank, most of those shows pointing out American ignorance regarding their own nation are made on home turf.
Yeah.
But you'll find people outside of the USA saying things like they don't know anything about history, not even their own. They believe only in their own heroic narrative and think the French Revolution is a roller coaster. We're told Americans are so insular, they are out of their depth when they walk out of the front door. But is any of this true? Listen to this. There's a cult of ignorance in the United States, and there always has been. The strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge. Those words were spoken by the American scientist Isaac Asimov. But the fact that those words were his means there's a contradiction in terms. America is constantly ablaze with creative thinking. There is a daily conflagration of innovation, thoughtful introversion, skepticism, groundbreaking scientific research.
There's here, he's actually coming, he's not saying it out loud, but that's exactly what it is. In the States, you have people from the entire spectrum. You got someone from all the way over here, all the way over there, and a lot in the middle. Okay. Stuff is happening in the US. There's a lot of things happening there. Science, I mean, just so many things that are discovered, so many things that are being done, so many things that are being achieved. Where does it happen? It happens on American soil. Keep that in mind when you talk shit about it.
World-changing fiction, reasonable, intelligent discourse appearing in blogs, podcasts, etc. But it turns out a lot of people, including inside America and outside, believe a culture of ignorance is propagated there. Is there any data to support this? Yeah, there seems there is. The Big Think wrote a story in 2013 with the title, "Why Are Americans So Ignorant?" And indeed, within the article is a lot of compelling evidence that many, in some cases most Americans, know very little about how their own country works, or worked, and don't even ask about the rest of the world. Weak civics curricula, partisan propaganda, and misplaced priorities of the mainstream media all share some blame for American ignorance, the writer says. But we feel it goes deeper than that. We'll let you decide. Number 3. Positiveness and friendliness. We've really been bashing America, so now we'll look at a positive stereotype, as equally untrue for all Americans. We must add, though, that when it comes to generalizations of countries, many people harbor a negative bias. How many of you have ever uttered the words, "Oh, I really don't like the English, the French, the Indian, the Chinese"? Just add your nation to the list. We recently saw a comment made by a young American who has gone to study in the UK. He couldn't wait to get out, saying the atmosphere for the most part was gray, unfriendly, and intimidating. Maybe he just went to the wrong place, but one might argue that Americans are in general more open and positive than Brits. We might remember what the dry, wry British celebrity intellectual Stephen Fry said about his trip to the US when he made a show about travel there. He said this sense of outgoing positivity he enjoyed, and he said it's something the Brits were missing. You can do it in America, or at least many people are taught to think they can.
That's a very good point. I feel like the U.S. is one of the few countries where optimism is being taught. Optimism. You can feel it when talking to people. I mean, when I was in the States those 3 times, honestly, I was warmly welcomed by everyone that I was visiting. Now, I'm from Germany. I didn't get too much backlash, honestly, or from people having mean conceptions or anything like that about our country. But it's there was a video we did the other day, a reaction to it, where it said that Americans don't like to get close to other people. That's totally not the case. They like to get close. They like to be loud. That's true. But then again, I mean, you can be loud anywhere in the world. Okay, and if you enjoy yourself, you enjoy yourself. Optimism is being taught. It's. I always look at it when you're on a flight with someone, right? You're on a flight from one place to another. Honestly, Americans were one of the most fun people to talk to at the airport, in the plane, and one of the nicest in general. They were very open. Even if they didn't want a full-on conversation with you, they at least made you feel like they're not being annoyed, like, oh, you're not annoying them. Can really appreciate that.
While back in Britain, perhaps the most downtrodden submit to the fact that life is hard, painful. Where's the beer? What some people call arrogance, Fry said, was partly American optimism, or what he said was a refusal to see oneself in a bad light. He added, if you go to an American bookshop, by far the biggest section is the self-help and improvement. He said people believe that life is refinable and improvable. That's how America works, he said. You adapt and you find ways to improve, you never submit. Hell yeah, he loves that about America. Take that in your British pipes and smoke it. We think we might add here that a lot of people have experienced this, and while harboring the stereotype that Americans are outgoing and confident, those same people might hold a counter-generalization that sometimes this positivity climax is a bit too hard. It jumps the shark. And then, within this transposition, it manifests as something deplorable to others. It turns into pride without substance, blind faith, a superiority complex that is bathed only in its own ignorance. Number 2. Money. It's all about money. If you've ever read critiques on Hollywood versus cinema, you'll find that Hollywood is said to be firstly, perhaps only, a money-making enterprise. European cinema, we're told, is more about the art. In an American film, often the happiest of all happiest endings is when they get away with the money. What else could matter? If you want to make a movie in Hollywood...
Now, even if that was true, why are then so many people watching it? That's the case. I mean, for the Hollywood to make money, obviously people must be interested, so that they have to create a. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that every single story they make is great, because honestly, I'm watching 1% of what Hollywood releases, but they still need to. People still need to be interested. If people are not interested in watching your movie, then you're not going to make money. Even if that wasn't your intent, or if that was your intent.
Hollywood. First show bits of it to the most average consumers and ask what they think, then make the film based on the results. Even if the movie might be greeted with intense dislike by more refined audiences, it's all about cash, goddammit. We won't spend long on this, but America didn't invent capitalism. It's evidently just been very good at it. But at the same time, America embraces free speech, and critics of capitalism and neoliberalism abound in the country. America, the foundation of the United States, was built to have restrictions in place for if or when any behemoth gets out of control and gains too much power. We won't address the complications or merits of this today, but we will say that much of the world thinks America is overly money-centered, more than, say, focused on happiness gained from other means than merely being rich and having lots of things. Number 1. Americans are all fat. Some Europeans and other citizens of the world like nothing more than to show their own superiority by constantly defaming Americans for their ingrained bad habits and slovenly TV-addicted fast food-related obesity. It is a fact that some part of America has a problem with eating, and this has led to what's called an obesity epidemic.
Well, there's a lot of people. It's not just in a small part. I mean, when you go into a Walmart, you go into a Target, you go into a regular, corner shop, a liquor store, whatever. It's just the case. You see a lot of people like that. It's not just a part. It's a problem.
that has resulted in widespread health complications. Your average Asian might touch down in, say, Houston for the first time and think they've discovered a land of giants. But America is not the fattest country in the world. It's around the 17th according to the WHO. It's the fattest Western nation, but a lot of other Western countries are not far behind in terms of obesity. Obesity crises are happening in the UK, New Zealand, Ireland, Australia, and many other nations. We can hardly say the junk food epidemic is an American affliction only. And on the other hand, many Americans are fitness freaks. It's a fitness-conscious country as well as a nation of couch-bound sugar junkies.
This is exactly what I mean. You got people. You get such a large spectrum of people living in the country. You got a lot you got some from this side, you got some on the other side, you got a lot of in between. I mean, it's just a lot of things are happening. You got the fittest people in the world in the States. You also got the fattest people in the world in the States. That's how it is.
Just look at popular podcasts such as The Joe Rogan Show, and you'll see that health, longevity, physical improvement is on the minds of many Americans. You could even go as far to say that this new wave of health improvement is being led by an American avant-garde. But yes, the stereotype of fat America is hardly only imaginary. We could have added more to this list, but we feel if we're to debate these stereotypes in the comments, we might—
So what do you have? All fat, money's all about the money. Positiveness, friendliness, ignorance, arrogance. I'm not gonna say good points, but I disagree with some of them. Yeah. Well, I have a different take.
leave it here, as it could get confusing. Do you think any of these stereotypes are true? Do you take offense to any of them, or do you think that they're merely criticisms that can lead to improvement? We'd love to hear from Americans and all of you who haven't visited the country but still have an opinion. Tell us what you—
So let's go back real quick. So I was in the States 3 times in my life.
But we—
3 times. I've been to the States 3 times. I'm from Germany. Americans all fat. Definitely a little bigger. That's just a fact. It doesn't matter where you go. I was in California. I mean, you saw people like that all the time. Money, it's all about the money. People want to live a good life. People want to give a good life, and money, that's what it does. You know, it gives you a good life. That's just what it is. I mean, more comfortable at least. Positiveness and friendliness, I would say so. I'd say so on average. Ignorance. I mean, when I've talked to people from the States, there's certainly subjects that I talk about that is being taught here, or I've taught myself, where people from the US have really no clue about. It goes the other way around as well, but it's there's some truth to that. But then again, you got people from the whole spectrum. You got some really smart people, and you some really just out there. Okay, and ignorance, arrogance, it goes hand in hand, if anything. So
we feel if we're to who haven't visited—
All right, yeah. What is your opinion? What is your opinion of the US as a tourist, especially? Where are you from? Like, if you travel to the US, let me know where you originally came from. I'd be more than interested, because it's always, me coming from Germany is different than if I came from Spain, or if I came from Serbia, or if I came from Poland, went to the US for the first time, because we grew up all differently. I'd be more than interested in what your take is on it. And for every American out there, because that seems to be my largest audience, do you agree with these points? I'd be more than curious. Other than that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if there's any other videos you would like me to react to, give me the title of the video down in the comments, and I'll go check it out. Other than that, guys, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.